The colonists who settled Winchester chose the area because of its abundance of water. The water has continued to attract people to live here to enjoy its recreational opportunities and its beauty. But abundant water has also caused problems, whether of natural causes or of man-made origin. Since 1999, Winchester's successive boards of selectmen have pursued solutions to the town's river and street flooding problems. The selectmen have produced this program to tell Winchester's residents about the river and its problems, the flood mitigation program adopted in 1999, and our drainage improvement program, challenges, progress, and where we stand now. As chairman of the 2006 Board of Selectmen, I invite you to watch and learn more about your town. Flooding caused by the river and other waterways overflowing their banks is not new. From as early as 1855, we have stories that tell a familiar tale of streets turning into rivers and cellars being flooded, of evacuations from flooded homes and flooding on high ground as well as low, of Cross Street and Ginn Field being under, of the steps at Center Falls Dam disappearing under the high water, of the sewer system backing up, of pounding rain and flooding that damaged sidewalks and streets and flooded such places as Lowell Avenue and Shore Road, of the parks becoming lakes, of traffic halted. For much of the 20th century, pictures can tell the story, one not simply of temporary inconvenience, but also of multi-million-dollar damage to private property, town infrastructure and businesses, of closed schools and businesses, and threats to the public health and safety. Flooding in Winchester may be a story as old as the town, but as the potential health and safety risks and magnitude of property damage have increased in recent years, flood mitigation and stormwater management have become major priorities for the Board of Selectmen. Solutions are involved, expensive, and lengthy. To understand why, we must look at the river, at what can cause flooding, and at what needs to be done. The Aberjona River, as it currently flows through Winchester, retains little of its original channel bed and environmental character. Old views may appear unrecognizable. As they arrived, colonists began erecting bridges and dams, creating mill ponds and cutting new channels for their mills. Later development continued impacting the river. What was done in the past remains relevant today, since the river channels, dams, and bridges that we are dealing with now were created by former generations to meet past needs and correct past problems. Yesterday's efforts may or may not serve today's Winchester. The Aberjona River flows through Winchester from Woburn and empties into the Mystic Lakes. The original mouth of the river was covered in 1864 when Charlestown decided to use the upper Mystic Lake as a reservoir for drinking water. The Charlestown Water Works built a dam which enlarged the upper lake and covered the original mouth of the river. Other significant changes in this area of the river, as well as the entire length of the river, occurred in the 19th century with the building of the railroad in 1835 and the later construction of metropolitan sewers. The railroad crossed the river in 3 places, necessitating the building of bridges and embankments. The first sewers followed the general path of the river and its tributary, Horn Pond Brook. One of these left a sewer siphon jutting into the river near the Wedgemere Station. The first sewer, constructed in 1878, was built to reduce industrial pollution. Industrialization affected the entire length of the river and brook. When industrialization reached its height in the 19th century, industrial waste destroyed the quality of the water. At the end of the 19th century, the river and brook were filthy, and their surrounding marshes and swamps were breeding mosquitoes, ridden with vermin, filled with refuse, stagnant and slimy during hot months. Over a course of 50 years, the town engaged in 3 great river improvement programs, which defined most of the course and character of the river as we have it today. During the 1890s, the newly created Winchester Park Commission Metropolitan Park Commission, and the City of Boston cooperated on a cleanup of the river and the creation of parkland and a parkway. Just below the town center, they removed the tannery, coal and lumber yard, railroad freight yard, livery stable, 9 tenement houses, pig pens, and outhouses, and created the Mystic Valley Parkway, Manchester Field, and Ginn Field. This involved rechanneling the river between Mystic Avenue and Waterfield Road and started a trend toward having a single river channel. The river channel from Mystic Avenue to Mill Pond was altered a second time in the 1940s. Formerly, the river above the town center spread out into 2 swampy ponds, Judkins and Aberjona. During the 1910s and 20s, the swampy upper end of Judkins Pond was gradually filled in to create a park and a playing field called Shore Road Field. But the fill kept sinking, and football games ruined the field. Therefore, in 1946, the Aberjona River at Manchester Field was moved parallel to the railroad in a narrow, straight channel, allowing Manchester Field to be enlarged for the sake of a good football field. The resulting river channel, however, is narrow and constrained by underground sewer lines. During major storms, Ginn Field becomes a flood expansion area. In the town center, Mill Pond was created about 1640. Its successive dams have always been a major control over the flow of water through the town. In 1911, the Waterways Committee, with Herbert Kellaway, architect, recommended the second great project, including improvements to Mill Pond. The town acquired the property around the pond, tore down the mills, reformed the channel between the bridges, strengthened its banks, and built a new dam, an attractively curved and stepped concrete structure. Fitted it with 2 30-inch gate valves to drain Mill Pond when necessary, and built new bridges, though leaving intact the Mount Vernon Street Bridge, built in 1872. The new structures, being larger, were meant to reduce the backup of swampy water upstream. It was then that the town began filling in the upper end of Judkins Pond for the Shore Road Field. Nevertheless, above Swanton Street, the river area was still swampy and unhealthy. In the 1930s, a new Waterways Committee acted on a second set of Kellaway recommendations, dug new channels for the river, gave them solid banks, and eliminated the swamps. As with the earlier projects, some old channels were eliminated, such as at Washington Street, where the river formerly split into 2 channels. The industries were left in place, but 3 new parks, Shore Road Field, Davidson Park, and the Washington Street Park, as well as a swimming pond beyond Leonard Field, were created. Flood control was considered, and between Swanton and Washington Streets, 3 flood expansion ponds were created, with a series of small dams to control the water level, 1 pond now lying between the village and the transfer station, and the others at Davidson Park and behind Leonard Field. However, these do not provide enough water storage during major flood events. The look of the river of the 1930s is gone today, with the loss of open industrial area and with overgrowth in and along the river. The section above Skilling's Road changed significantly in the 1960s when the town created space for a high school playing field. In 1968, the river west of the railroad was channeled underground in 3 large culverts, and Aberjona Pond was filled to create the field for the new high school built in 1972 on the site of the old Shore Road Field in the floodplain. The river projects of the past accomplished their major purposes, reducing industrial pollution and the vermin and mosquito problems, and producing parks and fields. But past work along the river has also left us with the following: large and small dams built for now obsolete reasons, which still control the flow. The large dams fitted with antiquated mechanisms to allow the water to drain. Bridges from Bacon Street in the south up through Washington Street near the Woburn line, which were all built 50 to 123 years ago, and whose hydraulic capacity may no longer be sufficient. Also, railroad bridges, one of which is still too small despite the alterations made during the construction of the 1950s overpass. A straightened single river channel without natural overflow areas and surrounding wetlands, which, although once unhealthy, served as water storage areas. a continued maintenance problem, and continued potential for flooding. Not only has the river itself been altered, but also conditions around the river have changed, with more development, increased impervious surface, and the loss of water retention areas. There is more water runoff. There are more homes, businesses, and people to be affected when flooding strikes. Solutions for all the problems are not easy. A river cleanup isn't enough. River conveyances need improvement. Floodwater storage must be considered. Neighboring communities upstream and downstream are also involved. Following the storms and floods of 1996 and 1998, the Board of Selectmen and its staff sought a remedy for the flooding and came up with a new river improvement program. In 1999, the Selectmen engaged Camp Dresser and McKee to study and make recommendations for the river. From their report came a 16-point program, including widening sections of the river channel, increased number of culverts running under Cha-Cha Field, increasing the hydraulic capacity of the Center Falls Dam and bridges at Shore Road, Swanton Street, Cross Street, and Mount Vernon Street, removing the little dams above Davidson Park and below Leonard Pond, and moving the Metropolitan Water Resource Authority siphon near the Wedgemere train station. The program is complex, lengthy, and expensive. The three major challenges are funding, regional impacts, and layers of governmental regulations and permitting. The first hurdle, actually a series of hurdles, is the cost, first estimated at $13 million. Even with bonding, without the support of state legislators, shown here meeting with flood victims in 2001, and without state and federal aid, Winchester could not pay it all without financially crippling the town. With federal and state aid and town appropriations, the town managed to accomplish 4 of the less expensive projects beginning in 2002. A parallel culvert was constructed next to the 1950s Shore Road Bridge, using both state and local funds. The Department of Public Works removed the little dam below Leonard Pond. Built to help maintain the level of the water in Leonard Pond, the dam lost that function after the pond was separated from the river in 1938. One of the original 30-inch valves at the Center Falls Dam, used to drain water below the height of the dam, was replaced with a 5-foot butterfly valve and has already proved helpful in lowering the height of the river prior to storms. At the Cross Street Bridge, the capacity for flow passing under the bridge has been increased through the construction of a parallel relief culvert next to the existing bridge opening. Several other projects have been under study or design, and town staff has investigated creative methods of funding. During the Cummingsville Branch Sewer Line lawsuit, the town negotiated for the MWRA to move the siphon at the Wedgemere station at no cost to the town. Construction is planned for 2007. A concept for the design of an additional Mount Vernon Street Bridge culvert has been chosen. The town is assuming design and engineering costs, and our state legislators are pursuing funds for construction. Over the past few years, the Army Corps of Engineers has worked on a feasibility study of the channel between Bacon Street and Waterfield Road, which includes environmental testing and financial fact-finding. If the Corps continues the project, construction costs will be shared 65% by the Corps and 35% by the town. The Corps is also considering developing the Atlantic Gelatin site at the Woburn-Winchester line as a potential flood retention area during major storm events. The Tri-Community Greenway, shared by Winchester, Woburn, and Stoneham, provides for rebuilding the railroad bridge near the Morocco School, estimated to be one of the more expensive projects. In addition, the town has done 2 drainage projects that will help the river. 2 culverts over Horn Pond Brook, the major tributary to the Aberjona River, at Canal Street and Sylvester Avenue, were replaced in 2004, and drainage improvements were made to the Cross Street underpass at the MBTA train bridge in 2005. Since all communities within the Mystic River watershed are impacted by the river, the second challenge is to get other communities and state agencies on board with our program. For years, Winchester has pursued cooperative efforts. One project was the replacement of a partially collapsed storm drain culvert under the commuter rail line at Davidson Park in 2003, with Winchester doing the design and permitting and the MBTA paying for the project. The town also works with local and state agencies to meet all governmental regulations. Although in the 1930s the town was able just to engineer plans, hire out-of-work men, and send them out with a backhoe and shovels, today's river work requires a large and complicated amount of study, engineering, and permitting. Permitting involves an extensive number of applications to local, state, and federal environmental agencies which examine a complex set of environmental issues, including low flow and drought conditions, wetlands protections, plus issues of the built environment and infrastructure, as well as flood control. These groups may have different, even conflicting standards and requirements. It was the need for permitting which brought the program to a temporary halt in 2003. As part of the flood mitigation program, as required by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, the town must submit an Environmental Impact Report, or EIR. In 2003, the town learned that it could no longer approach its flood mitigation program on a project-by-project basis, but would first have to submit an EIR for the full program. A waiver was granted for the Cross Street culvert, but for that project only. Implementation of the rest of the projects came to a standstill. The state decision also expanded the scope of the project significantly past flood control to include stormwater control, water quality, watershed management, and regional planning issues. The town was told to evaluate program alternatives that include solutions beyond town lines. To prepare the EIR in 2004, the town hired Enser International, which has had in-depth experience with Massachusetts regulations and the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act process. The EIR has three main goals. The first goal is to gain regulatory approval and meet state certificate requirements, including analysis of alternative project elements and mitigation measures. By the end of the process, the town should have all its permits in place. A second goal is to incorporate and address comments and concerns of stakeholders, such as local and regional committees, regulators, citizens and citizen groups, and local industry. A third goal is to minimize the schedule and the costs of the design and implementation of the flood mitigation projects, while also protecting the environment and remaining sensitive to any impacts on Winchester's neighbors. The scope for the EIR has been separated into three phases, the first being preparation of the draft report, submitted in February 2006. During this phase, Enser held an introductory stakeholders meeting, assisted the Federal Emergency Management Agency with modeling for its revised floodplain maps, conferred with the Army Corps of Engineers regarding its project, did the modeling for Winchester, and prepared a draft EIR. Following a second stakeholders meeting, Enser submitted the draft EIR to the state. As expected, Enser's modeling for FEMA resulted in an enlarged floodplain for 100-year storms. To address this flooding, as well as potential impacts downstream, Enser examined several alternatives and recommended an alternative program that mitigates Winchester's problems while not shifting them out of town. This alternative omits 4 of the original channel projects, since they were deemed to have minimal impact. Removing those and the completed projects from the original list of 16 results in a list of 8 remaining projects. Of these, 1, Center Falls Dam, is half finished. The remaining channel project has been extended down to the Wedgemere Siphon rather than stopping at Bacon Street to address adverse slopes there. The alternative also proposes 2 out-of-town projects, 1 each in Woburn and Medford, to mitigate impacts downstream. According to Enser, implementation of the draft EIR alternative should significantly shrink the floodplain in several areas. Other subjects covered in the EIR include in-town flood storage capacity, sediment and water quality, impacts to wildlife habitat and mitigations for resource areas, impacts to archaeological and historic architectural resources, and temporary construction-related impacts. At the request of the state, as this program is being recorded, additional information is being put together to supplement the draft EIR to address state and stakeholders' concerns. Then follow Phase 2, preparation of the final EIR, and Phase 3, design and permitting. Following the third phase, we can return to bidding and construction of the actual projects. There are more causes of flooding than an overflowing river. Therefore, the Board of Select is taking a many-pronged approach to flooding, including also sewer surcharging due to inflow and infiltration, stormwater management, and a major three-phase drainage improvement program. The Drainage Improvement Program is meant to help flood-prone areas not covered by the river program. During Phase 1, with bonding approved for $3 million, 6 projects were completed on Wickham Road, West Chardon Road and Grove Street, Arlington Street, Myopia Street, Canal Street and Sylvester Avenue, Townway, Stoll Road, and Marchant Road. Recent rain events indicate that Phase 1 improvements have been effective in mitigating localized flooding. For Phase 2, Spring 2005 Town Meeting approved $2.15 million for 8 projects, whose implementation began in 2005. The projects include the completed Cross Street underpass drainage improvements at the MBTA train bridge, storm drain improvements and enlargement of the existing system at Tufts Road and Chester Street, a study of stormwater diversion to Winter Pond on the Lower West Side and Cambridge Street, replacement of the drain line at New Meadows and Thornton Roads, and installation of an infiltration system off Wildwood Street, Glen Road and Glen Green capacity analysis and storm drain improvements, trash rack repairs and storm drainage rehab at several locations, including Westside Field, Highland Avenue, Squire Road, and Thornbury Road, the completed repair and replacement of undersized pipe at Pocahontas Drive, and flood mitigation design for Lachlan Road and High Street. Phase 3 is expected to begin in fiscal year 2008. Possible projects include drainage improvements around Winter Pond, Lachlan Road and High Street, Thornbury Road and Berkshire Drive, Cox Road, and Squire Road at Thornbury Road. The 2003 Board of Selectmen and subsequent boards have affirmed their commitment to addressing flood mitigation with a written statement which includes 4 goals and corresponding commitments. The first goal of the Board of Selectmen is to pursue every means available to prevent harm to life and property through flood mitigation, improved stormwater management, and water purification projects. The Board is thus committed to keeping flood control and water quality as top priorities. The second goal is to do this in a fiscally responsible manner. Because of limited resources, the Board is committed to minimizing town dollars spent on its water projects while maximizing federal and state dollars to move forward expeditiously. A third goal is to consider, within the constraints of an urgent safety situation and a strained fiscal position, improving the environment and quality of life by enhancing the assets of the waterways. As far as it enjoys community support, the Board is committed to a vision of renewed green spaces, protected wildlife habitats, and recreational opportunities such as bike paths and trails, which not only enhance the beauty and pleasures of the town, but also its economic vitality. A final goal, accompanying all of those above, is to listen and communicate with the residents. This Board is committed to the public process, to open public discussion, input from the community as a whole, and balanced input from the professionals on town boards and committees. The Board is committed to keeping the community informed of its progress. The community is asked in return to understand that these visions and goals can only be accomplished as a cooperative effort, including the cooperation of residents and town meeting. After the boards, consultants, agencies, and staff have worked out solutions and drawn up plans, the limits to what can be done are ultimately set by what the community itself wants to support. As the river has always flowed through Winchester, so has it flowed through the history of our town. In fact, no landscape in Winchester could be more historic than the Aberjona River and its tributaries. The history of the town began with its waterways. The water drew settlers. The first house was built along the banks of the Aberjona. The river water offered a source of power for industry from the time that the first colonists built a grist mill up through the end of the 19th century. A village first grew up around the mill pond created for that early mill. and that pond still lies at the heart of Winchester's Civic Center. Stretching north and south of Mill Pond, the river still suggests opportunity for economic development. Winchester's waters have offered beauty and enjoyment, enhanced since the late 19th century by a series of public parks. The river, lakes, and ponds have been the scene for boating, skating, swimming, and fishing. Nearby paths are used for walking and biking. The waters have inspired artists. Over the past several centuries, the river has been both valued and abused. We have enjoyed it and been troubled by it. The entire town benefits from it and suffers when it floods. And so the current Board of Selectmen, despite the engineering and regulatory hurdles we face, is reaffirming its commitment to reduce flooding and improve the river by continuing the difficult, complex task of implementing the comprehensive flood mitigation program begun several years ago by prior boards. And we also will continue to improve drainage away from the river through the town's ongoing comprehensive drainage improvement program, substantial portions of which have already been completed. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen and town staff, we hope you found this program both enjoyable and informative, and we thank you for your continued support and ideas as we continue this important work that we believe will improve our town and the quality of life that we all enjoy.
Hi, WinCam. My civic organization is having an event tomorrow. Can you send a staff member over to tape it?
Well, my Rotary Club is holding a special program this week, and we'd really love it if you could come down and cover it.
Here at WinCam, we get phone calls such as these every day. Unfortunately, our staff cannot cover every event. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you or your organization how you can create your own public service announcement, cover your own event, or produce your own television show. All you need to do is have someone from your organization attend a producer's class where they'll learn everything necessary to create and produce a professional TV show. And that's what community television is all about. For more information on how to become a WinCam producer, call me, Don Cronin, at 781-721-2050, or email me at dcronin@wincam.org.
Welcome to Winter Pond, one of Winchester's most versatile recreation areas. Winter Pond offers you and your family and friends canoeing, sailing, fishing, winter skating, wonderful bird watching, and more. The Friends of Winter Pond exist to protect and preserve this lovely recreational resource. Do join us by sending us your tax-deductible $25 or greater contribution. Thank you.
Access is empowerment.
Access is technology.
Access is involvement.
Access is expression.
Access is community.
Access is fun.
Access is knowledge.
Access is democracy.
Access is free speech. Please be part of the Access experience. Contact your local Access Center for more information.